Thank you all for joining us here at I-80 Sports, where today we are previewing the Pacific Division for the year 2024-2025. Guys, thank you all for joining us here again at I-80 Sports. Thank you all for joining us here at I-80 Sports. Make sure you subscribe down below, youtube.com/NHL on I-80 Sports. It's been a little while. We took a break in the summertime, but we are back at this point. And if you're not subscribed and you want to be subscribed, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification so that way you know when our content goes live as well. And drop a comment with who you think is the team to beat in the Pacific Division this year and who is looking worse on paper. Let us know. And if you follow us on X, thank you guys so much. But if you don't, make sure you follow us down below at I-80_sports NHL. I'm having trouble clicking through things. I'm Brian. He's Tom. Tom, how you doing today?
Doing well, and here we are. It is mid-September. We're a couple weeks out from the season. It's I'd say the weather's starting to get cooler, but that's kind of a lie where we live, at least in New Jersey. It's starting to get dark out a little bit earlier. That's kind of a bummer. But the NFL season started. It was last week, so that means we're just closer and closer to hockey. We even had some rookie games this weekend. Watched the Rangers and Flyers rookie teams duke it out over the weekend. Friday and Saturday night. So we're getting closer and closer. The real preseason starts next weekend. Here we are to preview the Pacific Division. I predicted to be a weak division last year. Was kind of anything but. And this year, we'll really see what happens with it. It's going to be a lot of the same, but there are some glaring differences as well with certain teams.
Yeah, some things stay the same and some things, well, they are kind of a changing, and we'll be getting into this. But before we start looking forward, we have to look a little bit back into what happened last NHL season in 2023 and 2024. Tom, can you run down last year's standings in the Pacific Division, please?
I sure can. In first place with 109 points, the Vancouver Canucks. In second place, Stanley Cup finalists, Western Conference champions, 104 points, Edmonton Oilers. Third place, Los Angeles Kings with 99 points. Certain guy wore number 99, played for them once upon a time. In fourth place, my all-time favorite team of all time, the Vegas Golden Knights with 98 points.
I know how much you love them so much, by the way.
Oh, and you will be hearing about them today. You will. In fifth place, the Calgary Flames with 81 points. Sixth place with a matching 81 points, the Seattle Kraken. Seventh place, 59 points, the Anaheim Ducks. And rounding out the bottom, the San Jose Sharks with 47 points. And them 47 points netted them number one overall draft choice, Macklin Celebrini.
And we'll be talking a little bit about the San Jose Sharks, surprisingly, in this video as well, because there's actually some positive things to kind of glean, even through the doom and gloom that was last year for the San Jose Sharks. But before we dive into that, let's talk about some additions and subtractions throughout the Pacific Division. And maybe I should talk slower so I don't stumble over my words, or maybe I'll still stumble over them, but still. Starting with the Calgary Flames, some key additions for the Flames this past year. Anthony Mantha, Jake Bean, Kevin Ball, Ryan Lomberg, and Devin Cooley, and some key subtractions and some big ones. Jacob Markstrom, Andrew Mangiapane, Oliver Shillington, AJ Greer, Dennis Gilbert, Jordan Osterley, and Nikita Okhotiuk. Moving on to the Edmonton Oilers. Some key additions here: Jeff Skinner, Victor Arvidsson, Ty Emberson, Matthew Savoy, Vasily Podkolzin, Josh Brown, Colin Delia. And yeah, that was about it for the Edmonton Oilers. Some really big additions there, and bigger subtractions in Ryan McLeod, Warren Fogle, Cody Ceci, Jack Campbell, Vincent Desjardins, Philip Broberg, Dylan Holloway, and Sam Carrick. Over to Los Angeles, some key additions here: Darcy Kemper, Joel Edmondson, Warren Fogle, Tanner Jeannot, Caleb Jones, Kyle Burrows, Jack Studnicka, and Glenn Gaudin. And key subtractions in Matt Waugh, Pierre-Luc Dubois, our favorite player, Cam Talbot, Victor Arvidsson, Carl Grundstrom, and Blake Lizotte. Over to the Vegas Golden Knights, some key additions there. Alexander Holtz, Akira Schmid, Cal Burke, Robert Haig, Victor Olofsson, Zach Aston Reese, Tanner Lazinski, and Ilya Samsonov. Key subtractions, Logan Thompson, Michael Amodio, Anthony Mantha, Jonathan Marchessault, Alec Martinez, Yuri Patera, Chandler Stevenson, Sheldon Rampal, William Carrier, Byron Froese, and Leighton. I think I butchered the last name there. Leighton Ahak. And to the San Jose Sharks, key additions: Tyler Toffoli, Alexander Wemberg, Cody Ceci, and number 1 overall pick Macklin Celebrini. You could also consider last year's number 4 overall pick Will Smith as a key addition as well, coming over to them from, I believe, Boston College or Boston University. I'm trying to remember.
I think Will Smith's a BC guy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, just going off the top of the dome on that one. Key subtractions in Ty Emberson, David Edstrom, Magnus Corona, Devin Cooley, Jacob McDonald, Jack Studnicka, Ryan Carpenter, Jacob Pedersen, Igor Afanasiev, Alexander Barabanov, and Philip Zadina. And to the Vancouver Canucks, key additions here: Jake DeBrusk, Danton Heinen, Kiefer Sherwood, Derek Forbort, Yuri Patera, Nate Smith, Vincent Desjardins, and Daniel Sprung. Key subtractions in Vasily Podkolzin, Elias Lindholm, Nikita Zadarov, Ian Cole, Casey DeSmith, Sheldon Dries, Aidan McDonough, Zach Sauchenko, and Nick Cechek. Going back to the Anaheim Ducks, because I realized I skipped them before. Key additions here: Robbie Fabry, Brian Dumoulin, Jansen Harkins, and Carson Mayer. Key subtractions in Jakob Silverberg, Max Jones, Gustav Lindstrom, Robert Haig, Benoit Olivier Grohl, and Ben Myers. And lastly, the Seattle Kraken. The key additions here: Brandon Montour, Chandler Stevenson, Ben Myers, Mitchell Stevens, Brandon Biro, Nicholas Broulard, Maxime Lajoie, and Josh Mahura, with key subtractions in Brian Dumoulin, Devon Shore, Connor Carrick, Cole Lind, Cameron Hughes, Jimmy Schultz, Chris Dreger, Tomas Tatar, Petro Sapala, Andrew, my brain doesn't want to pronounce this name,
Podorowski,
and Mitch Reinke. It's amazing because like all these names to me just literally just blend together after a while. Just like, that's not going to be the name that's supposed to come out. But a lot of moving and shaking in the Pacific Division. And I'm going to harken back to something that Tom had said before. We misstepped last year when saying that the Pacific Division wasn't very stacked last year and it was anything but. And I think that's going to be the case this year again. But what were some of your favorite offseason moves to get this started here, Tom? What were some of the favorite moves across the division, and who's looking better on paper?
Well, I'll tell you what. I really, really, really liked what Vancouver did by bringing in Jake DeBrusk and Danton Heinen. Jake DeBrusk solidifies their top 6 even more. Danton Heinen solidifies the bottom 6 even more. It's funny because you're bringing in 2 former Boston Bruins. Obviously, they weren't on the team in 2011 that beat the Canucks. Kind of just like an ironic thing that you're bringing in 2 former Boston Bruins to solidify the team. But that club has been a seesaw team over the years where you think they're going to finally take that next step and they fall back down to earth. And that is still in my head a little bit. But I still think that this is definitely a shoo-in for the playoffs this year, these Vancouver Canucks. These moves make them better, and I have a hard time seeing them taking a step back. Now, Edmonton. I liked what they did by bringing in Jeff Skinner. Jeff Skinner has just been a victim of bad luck everywhere he's gone. He's been in the league now almost 14 years, I believe, if I remember rightly, has never sniffed the playoffs once. Now, you can look at this from 2 sides of the coin. One coin, this guy has never seen the playoffs once. His body's not ready for the grind. He's going to be beat up come playoff time. Or you look at it from the other side of the coin. This guy is going to be so hungry when this team goes to the playoffs, especially with McDavid and Draisaitl on the team, the world's 2 best players, a team that was sniffing the Stanley Cup in 60 minutes and 2 goals away from winning it last year, and that may make him even more bloodthirsty. The guy's a goal scorer. They're going to slot him in with McDavid. I think Jeff Skinner is a great move for the Oilers. I also like what the San Jose Sharks did, bringing in Tyler Toffoli and Cody Ceci. Now, I don't think the Sharks are going to be a playoff team this year. I don't. Despite Celebrini coming there, I just don't see them as a playoff team. But I don't think they're going to finish in dead last either.
No. And it's funny because, like, to continue to segue on San Jose Sharks, I'm going to continue by also saying I really liked what San Jose did and what they're building right now. And now all of a sudden they have this future core emerging on their hands with Macklin Celebrini, Will Smith. I'll add William Eklund into that core as well. And now Yaroslav Askarov that you're adding from the Nashville Predators, which you get your goalie of the future. And this is a future number one goaltender. And to have a backup in Mackenzie Blackwood, maybe even as a 1B, or he's going to start the year more than likely as your 1A. I think this is how you build properly. This is how you rebuild properly. And where I like what the San Jose Sharks have done to add around these younger players, adding Tyler Toffoli, adding Cody Ceci, keeping guys like Marc-Edouard Vlasic around despite the bad contract. Given that, I'm a little disappointed by what Anaheim has done, like as contrast. Anaheim sports some of the best young talent on their team. Guys like Trevor Zegras, guys like Cutter Gauthier. The list goes on. I could name 6 or 7 guys that could legitimately form like the top, 25 players under 21 years old on that team right now. However, when you don't have, I'll say veteran leadership surrounded by it, it's tough to really develop them properly. And that's what I think San Jose is doing here. Beyond San Jose Sharks, I do like what Vancouver's done. I think Vancouver is doing enough to really retain and try to push for that top spot in the Pacific Division. But hot on their tails, the Edmonton Oilers needed to be savvy with their cap because there wasn't a lot to go around. And given the contract that they also just gave Leon Draisaitl, that's going to take effect next year, and thinking in the future of guys that they needed to sacrifice this past year, you lose Dylan Holloway, you lose Philip Broberg, you lose Ryan McLeod, guys that were, solid contributors on a stacked Edmonton Oilers team. They needed to get creative. And I thought it was very, very creative adding Jeff Skinner, Victor Arvidsson, retaining the services of Adam Henrique as well. This is already a very talented, experienced, and proven team in Edmonton. And they just added more to this team by adding more veteran leadership to this team, more veteran depth, guys who are ready for the grind of the playoffs. And that's what Edmonton's looking forward to right now. I'll echo lastly what Tom said. San Jose's probably not a playoff team this year, but they're not a team to overlook at all this year. They're not a team to, swiftly look past and be like, well, whatever about them. Beyond just some of the favorite offseason moves from this past year, who looks a lot better on paper after the offseason? Who looks a lot worse on paper after this offseason? So we talked a little bit about better. Who do you think looks worse?
You really want me to say? You really want me to say it?
Oh, come on!
You really want me to say it?
I do.
Vegas. And are my Nostradamus predictions coming true here? Yet again. They have to jettison off core guys. And this time, it was some pretty big names. Jonathan Marchessault comes to mind. Alec Martinez, they had to jettison off. Chandler Stevenson, jettison off. William Carrier, gone. Say what you will here. The people they replace them with are not better hockey players. They're just not. Let's just face it here. Let's face the music. The players they brought in to replace these guys are not better. They're just not better. Now let me just get back to this right here. The goaltending still has not been great. They haven't had good goaltending since Fleury. They've kind of just thrown a guy in there who they need to just let in less goals than the goalie on the other team does. Now don't get me wrong. You look at their center depth, Jack Eichel and Thomas Hertl, they're great players. Great players. But now go into those top lines. You're telling me that guys like your first line, Ivan Barbashev, is solid. Jack Eichel, solid. Victor Olofsson is on that first line. Your second line, Pavel Dorofeyev, Thomas Hertl, Mark Stone. Mark Stone cannot stay healthy. Hasn't been able to stay healthy for who knows how long. Now, you're going to tell me that Victor Olofsson and Pavel Dorofeyev are going to not carry the whole load, but are going to be able to make first and second line contributions on this team? It's a head scratcher to me. I don't think that those guys are capable of doing that. I think Vegas is still a playoff team. Yes, I don't think that they're going to crash and burn. No, their D is still pretty solid as well. Their bottom six is halfway decent. You still have William Karlsson holding down that third line. You still have Keegan Colasar, Brett Howden, and Nicholas Waugh on your fourth line. Like I said, the D is still pretty solid. But to tell me that this team is still a Stanley Cup contender, they're not. Playoff team, yes. Cup contender, not anymore.
Yeah, I'll echo what you're saying about Vegas. I still think Vegas is competitive enough to challenge for a playoff spot. And I think they're still going to be in that conversation, like in the upper part of the Pacific Division. They're still not a bad team. They're not. You know, this is a team that's 2 years removed from a Stanley Cup, and they still have the majority of that core together, despite losing some big key contributors and playoff MVP from that past year, Conn Smythe winner, Jonathan Marchessault. However, Vegas is still a decent team on paper. Another team that I felt added to their depth, and I think we're not going to talk about enough in this video, and I want to make sure it gets mentioned, the Seattle Kraken. Adding Chandler Stevenson from the Seattle Kraken, and also adding now Stanley Cup winner Brandon Montour to their defense as well, and re-upping Adam Larson on another 4-year contract that takes in effect after this year. I thought that was great for Seattle. I think they're less is more with them. And then we'll see what Shane Wright ends up becoming, maybe playing third and fourth line minutes this year for Seattle, maybe even a little bit more depending on what kind of start he gets off to. Just about every team looks better on paper. You know, I could say a good thing about pretty much every single team in the Pacific Division. I'm struggling to really fully say that with the Calgary Flames coming into this season. I think Calgary, let's face it, I think they plunged themselves into as close to a full-blown rebuild as you could possibly call it. And it's disappointing given how good this team was 2.5 years ago. It's really, really disappointing to see. However, I am going to glean some positivity out of this. You still have some players to be excited about there. You still have, Yegor Sharangovich, who recently just scored 30 goals this year. I think he's going to continue that production with them. You know, Nazem Kadri, I'm hoping that finally picks up the pieces there in Calgary. I'm hoping that Jonathan Huberdeau maybe finally figures it out a little bit. That would be nice to see. You still got guys like Blake Coleman that can contribute as well. And maybe even adding Anthony Mantha and seeing if he can kind of get the pieces back together. That would be great. The guy I'm actually really excited to watch on the Calgary Flames this year, and I think he's a bit of a dark horse, maybe entry into the Calder conversation. It's their future starting goaltender, Dustin Wolf. I think that he is a goaltender that you should be excited to watch. I don't know how much his play is really going to turn around the tide for the Calgary Flames. I'm hoping that they give enough minutes to Daniel Vladar so that way Dustin Wolf doesn't get lit up like a Christmas tree. But I think if we're going to glean any kind of positivity out of the Calgary Flames this year, I think Dustin Wolf is one of those bits of excitement to actually like kind of get behind there. But we're going to look at what some of these lineups do look like. So we're going to look at some lineup projections brought to you by Daily Faceoff here. So looking here first at the Anaheim Ducks. First line, we've got Alex Killorn, Leo Carlsson, and Troy Terry. Second line, Cutter Gauthier, Trevor Zegras, Frank Vetrano. Third line, Robbie Fabry, Mason McTavish, and Ryan Strome. And the fourth line, Brock McGinn, Isaac Lunderstrom, and Brett Leeson. Going down to the defense, we've got rookie defenseman Olin Zellweger with Cam Fowler. On the second pairing, Pavel Mintyukov with Radko Gudas. And on the third pairing, Brian Dumoulin with Jackson Lacombe. We're going to skip past the power play and penalty kill units. You know, if you want to freeze and try to flash it on the frame, good luck. If not, go to Daily Faceoff. Check it out yourself. But looking at the goaltending tandem, it's John Gibson with Lucas Dostal. Going back up, we're going to go on to the Calgary Flames from here, looking at their lineup. On the first line, Jonathan Huberdeau with Michael Backlund and Blake Coleman. On the second line, Connor Zary with Igor Sharangovich and Anthony Mantha. To the third line, Martin Pospisil with Nazem Kadri and Andrei Kuzmenko. And on the fourth line, Ryan Lomberg with Kevin Rooney and Walker Dewar. On the defense, first pairing, Mackenzie Weegar with Daniil Miramonov. Second pairing, Kevin Ball with Rasmus Anderson. And on the third pairing, Jake Bean with Braden Patchell. Going down to the goaltending tandem, as I mentioned before, Dustin Wolf is likely your 1A to go into this season, but don't overlook how many games that the 1B, Daniel Vladar, could get this year, if you're looking maybe possibly in fantasy. Going on down now to the Edmonton Oilers. Looking at this stacked lineup here. Top line, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins with Connor McDavid and Zach Hyman. To the second line, Jeff Skinner with Leon Draisaitl and Victor Arvidsson. Third line, Matthias Janmark with Adam Henrique and Connor Brown. And the fourth line, Vasily Podkolzin with Derek Ryan and Corey Perry. To the defense, we've got Matthias Ekholm with Evan Bouchard on the top pairing. Second pairing, Darnell Nurse with Ty Emberson. And on the third pairing, Brett Kulik with Troy Stecher. Going down to the goaltending, Stuart Skinner is your 1A with Calvin Pickard as your 1B. Should be important to mention that Evander Kane is probably going to start the year on the mend. And no timetable yet for his return, but he's a guy to kind of keep tucked into the back of your brain for as we get into the rest of this NHL season. To the LA Kings, top line here is Alex Laferriere with Anze Kopitar and Adrian Kempe. The second line is Kevin Fiala with Quinton Byfield and Arthur Kalev. Third line, Trevor Moore with Philip Deneau and Warren Fogle. And on the fourth line, Tanner Jeannot with Alex Turcotte and Akil Thomas. I got to say it outright right now. And I said it last year, LA might have the best center depth in the NHL. Might. I think Edmonton gives them a little bit of a run for their money nowadays. But that's still one of the best center depths in the NHL. To the defense, Mikey Anderson with Drew Downey. On the second pairing, Vladislav Gavrikov with rookie Brandt Clark. And on the third pairing, Joel Edmondson with Jordan Spence. Going on down to the goaltending, we've got our new starting goaltender this year for the LA Kings after that Pierre-Luc Dubois deal. Darcy Kemper figures to be your 1A with David Riddick as the 1B goaltender to start this year. Scrolling on down now, we've got to go a little bit further down to the San Jose Sharks. Looking at this young lineup, on the top line, William Eklund with Macklin Celebrini and Tyler Toffoli. On the second line, Mikael Granlund with Will Smith and Fabian Zetterlund. On the third line, Thomas Bordeleau with Alex Wenberg and Luke Kunin. And on the fourth line, Barclay Goodrow with Nico Sturm and Ty Dellandrea. Looking at the defense, on the first pairing, Mario Ferraro with Cody Ceci. On the second pairing, Jake Wallman with Jan Ruta. And on the third pairing, Henry Thrun with Mark-Edward Vlasic. To the goaltending, as we mentioned before, your 1A to start the year will be Mackenzie Blackwood with Yaroslav Askarov as your 1B. Important to note that Matt Benning and Logan Couture are starting off this year likely on the IR. I do not have an update on their injuries. I'm not sure when they will be ready to go, if they'll be ready to go for the start of this year. To the Seattle Kraken. Looking at the top line there, Jared McCann with Matty Beniers and Jordan Eberle. On the second line, Jaden Schwartz with Chandler Stevenson and Andrei Burakovsky. On the third line, Eli Tolvanen with Yanni Gord and Oliver Bjorkstrand. And on the fourth line, Ty Carty with Shane Wright and Brandon Tanev. I am so sorry if I pronounced Ty Carty's name wrong. You can correct me in the comments. On the defense, first pairing is Vince Dunn with Adam Larson. On the second pairing, Jamie Alexiak with Brandon Montour. And on the third pairing, Riker Evans with Will Borgen. The goaltending tandem for this year will be Philip Grubauer as your 1A and Joey Decord as your 1B. Now, scrolling on down, we've got a couple teams left. We're looking at the Vancouver Canucks next. On the first line for the Vancouver Canucks, Nils Höglander with JT Miller and Brock Besser. Then we have Jake DeBrusk with Elias Pettersson and Daniel Sprong on the second line. On the third line, Dakota Joshua with Teddy Bluger and Connor Garland. And on the fourth line, we've got Danton Heinen with Pius Suter and Kiefer Sherwood. Looking at the defense on the top pairing, we've got Quinn Hughes with Philip Hronik. And on the second pairing, we've got Carson Soucy with Tyler Myers. And on the third pairing, we've got Derek Forbort with Vincent Desjardins. And looking at the goaltending, we've got as your starting goaltender, at least for now, Thatcher Demko, and as your backup, Arturs Shilovs. Should be important to note that Thatcher Demko has been on the wicked mend with his knee injury that has been ailing him since March. So he's going to be a talking point, I think, throughout the season for the Vancouver Canucks. Finally, wrapping things up with the Vegas Golden Knights here. Looking at the first line, Ivan Barbashev with Jack Eichel and Victor Olofsson. Looking at the second line, Pavel Dorofiev with Thomas Hertl and Mark Stone. On the third line, Brendan Brisson with William Karlsson and Alexander Holtz. And on the fourth line, Brett Howden with Nicholas Waugh and Keegan Colasar. Looking at the defense, Noah Hanifin and Alex Pietrangelo are your first pairing defensemen. On the second pairing, Braden McNabb and Shea Theodore. And on the third pairing, Nicholas Hague with Zach Whitecloud. And the goaltending tandem to start this year will be Adin Hill and Ilya Samsonov. So, a lot to take in there and a lot that we just went over. But based on those projections, Tom, who do you think has the strongest lineup on paper?
I'm still going with the Vancouver Canucks on paper. Like I said, I really like what they did. I like that they upgraded their depth. I like their goaltending. I like their forward depth. I like their defensive depth. Obviously, Quinn Hughes is your number one defenseman, one of the best defensemen in the league. Weakest, I'm going to say, is Anaheim. Now, it's funny. I harken back to what I said about Vegas. It's going to be interesting with Anaheim. Anaheim is definitely going to be open for business at the deadline this year after standing pat and basically asking for King's ransoms last year for guys like Frank Vetrano. They're going to be open for business this year. Maybe Zegras, Vetrano's definitely gone. Maybe Zegras will be gone. Now, I bring up Vegas before because I can easily see Vegas banging on Anaheim's door at the deadline saying, hey, give me some of your guys. Give me some of your guys. But what I'll say is this. Those guys aren't these high marquee guys that Vegas has brought in over the last few years either. So that's just my my spiel on Anaheim, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. I mean, to me, on paper, Edmonton and Vancouver do look pretty strong on paper right now. Bit of a dark horse in my mind. I mean, it'll be interesting how they put the pieces together, but is it just me or San Jose doesn't look that awful this year in general? I feel like they could be a team that can surprise certain stronger teams on any given night. I'm not saying that they're going to be one of the best in the league, but I don't think they should be overlooked. Other teams that I think that could end up being, stronger this year are Seattle and LA as well. I think Seattle and LA should absolutely not be overlooked at all this upcoming year. And then weakest on paper to me, I think in my mind, it's probably Anaheim and Calgary. Anaheim, I want to see them do well enough in the early going to actually, prompt them to make some trades, like trade some of these younger guys and get better because they need veteran depth. They have almost no veteran depth at this point. So I want to see them do more. And Calgary, it's going to be really interesting to see with them this year. And Vegas, I think, finally takes a step back this year, which, before we get into that, let's project 1 through 8 in the division this year, Tom. So let's start with you. 1 through 8, how's the playoff for you?
Okay, number 1, as much as I love Vancouver and I've praised them, I'm still giving Edmonton number 1 in the division right now. Number 2, Vancouver Canucks. Number 3, as much as I don't like them, they're still a playoff team, Vegas Golden Knights. Number 4, LA Kings. I think they'll slot into a wild card spot. Number 5, Seattle Kraken. Now, Seattle's interesting. Seattle doesn't have a lot of firepower up top, but if they can, repeat that by committee scoring that they had 2 years ago and keep their goals against down, they might overtake LA, but that's a huge might. Number 6, I'm going with it here. I think San Jose is going to have a better year than a lot of people think. Not a playoff team, but I think that they're not going to finish in the basement either. Number 7, Calgary. It's what's going on there is what's going on there. And maybe they'll find somebody dumb enough to take Jonathan Huberdeau off their hands and they can really start rebuilding that thing. And number 8, Anaheim. Sellers at the deadline, for sale sign, Anaheim Ducks. they're going nowhere fast.
Well, for me, we look similar, but also different in this one. The top two stay the same for me. Finishing first in division, I've got the Edmonton Oilers. I think they're the team to beat, especially after going to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup last year. How could you not have them at the top of the projections right now? Second is the Vancouver Canucks. Here's the caveat for me with the Vancouver Canucks, though. If Thatcher Demko is not 100% throughout this year, and there is a high likelihood that he is not 100% throughout this year, I could see Vancouver slipping back in the standings. I still think they're a playoff team, but I could see them slipping as far back as 4 and still squeaking into the playoffs and being a wild card team. So that's just to tuck into the back of the head. Third, I've actually got the Seattle Kraken. I think that they're going to be, good enough that I think that they can easily find number 3 in the division this year. I think this is the year that they take that step forward. Fourth, I'm with you on this one. The LA Kings, I think they're still sporting a good lineup. The wild card for me here is Darcy Kemper. If Darcy Kemper can return to the form that he had when playing with before the Washington Colorado Avalanche, if he can return to that form that he had when he won the Stanley Cup with them, I think LA could honestly slide into that number 2 slot if if Thatcher Demko isn't fully 100%.
Just better hope they don't see Edmonton in the first round.
Just better hope. Fifth, and the surprise here, the Vegas Golden Knights, and it's no knock on them. I still could see them as a playoff team, but this is my projection, not yours.
I like your projection.
No, I'm saying it to the viewers out there at this point who are probably going to be like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. May or may not have been said last year. I read your comments. But anyway, 6, I've got the San Jose Sharks also. I think they're just good enough to get out of the basement, but they're not fully out of the basement yet. And then I'm going to flip-flop 7 and 8 on you here. I see Anaheim finishing in 7th because I don't think they're that bad, but they're still going to be a lottery team. And last, I've got the Calgary Flames. It's going to be an interesting year for them, unfortunately. But let's round out this episode with our question of the day, which question of the day is easy. Who's the team to beat in the Pacific Division this year? Tom, who's the team to beat?
Oilers and Canucks, really. The Oilers have the 2 best players in the world. Their forward depth is probably a little bit better than what Vancouver has. JT Miller and Elias Pettersson, good players, but they're not Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Flip side is if Vancouver's goaltending stays healthy, their goaltending's better than Edmonton, and I feel like their 6 defensemen are better than, as a unit, are better than what Edmonton has. So it's the Oilers and the Canucks. I'm still saying the Oilers are probably going to win this division, though.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you here. To me, it's between the Oilers and the Canucks being the top in the division. But if we're thinking about a tie break, I give it to Edmonton this year. I mean, the question mark over Thatcher Demko's head at the moment is enough pause for me to, give a little bit of concern in how volatile Vancouver's season could be. That being said, if he's good to go and he's fine, off the races for Vancouver for sure. But what do you guys think? Do you agree or do you disagree with our takes? You got to let us know in the comments section down below. And while you're there, if you're not subscribed already, subscribe down below, youtube.com/NHL on i80 Sports. And while you're there, hit the bell notifications so that way you guys know when our content goes live. If you're still on X, make sure you follow us down below at i80_sportsNHL. And if you follow us already, thank you guys so much for all of your support. And in general, thank you all for all of your support as well. We'll be coming at you next week with the Central Division preview and then the Atlantic and then the Metropolitan leading up to the beginning of the NHL season. But until then, I'm Brian. He's Tom. This has been our Pacific Division preview here on i80 Sports.